Have you ever wondered what it feels like to go 3.5 G's in a quarter mile? Horsepower! That's what we're going to talk about today. Horsepower is what makes the engine in a car go faster or slower. Some cars have more horsepower than others, and I'm going to go over 2 examples of what can add more horsepower to a vehicle and which one could be more effective than the other. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and explain the basics behind an engine. An engine goes through 4 phases of a 4-stroke engine. The first phase of an engine is an intake stroke. An intake stroke draws in the air through the intake valve into the cylinder while taking fuel that is being drawn in as well and mixes inside the cylinder. This is the very beginning process of what's going to be creating horsepower. The second stroke in an engine is compression. The compression stroke closes the valve for the intake and the exhaust, which then the cylinder travels up, compresses the gases of fuel and air, which creates extreme heat. Now, with me, take your hands and press them together. As you press your hands together, you can feel the heat that's generated between the two. That is the exact same principle as what's happening in the second stroke of a 4-stroke engine. The third stroke is a power stroke. The power stroke only happens when the spark plug ignites the air in the fuel mixture. When the air and fuel mixture is ignited by the spark plug, it creates a powerful explosion inside the engine that is controlled and creates the piston to drive down, which creates horsepower. When the piston is driven down from the explosion, it creates the force of wanting to return up. As the piston is returning up, we're going into the 4th stroke, which is called exhaust. The exhaust stroke is extracting all the unburnt gases or gases that are inside the cylinder out the exhaust valve. When the exhaust valve opens up, the piston goes up and it goes out the exhaust. So for a better understanding of this, I have a diagram of an engine. A basic diagram of an engine. The intake is labeled in blue, as shown here, goes into the throttle body, into the intake, goes down into the cylinders, and does the 4 strokes that have been talked about up here on the top, and then goes out the exhaust, the brown, just like the exhaust on the 4th stroke. Now, we're going to talk about the 2 different types of power adders. Nitrous is a power adder, and turbochargers. First, we're going to talk about nitrous. Nitrous oxide is a combination of nitrogen and oxygen mixed into fuel. Nitrogen is one form of a power adder that is added to an engine in order to increase the horsepower. The way the nitrous is injected into the intake, which then mixes in with the fuel already being injected into the engine and the air that's already coming into the engine. Essentially, the way you create more horsepower for any power adder is to add more air and more fuel. Nitrous, with it already having the property of oxygen in with it, is adding more air. The horsepower that is created by the more air can be very, very powerful. The side effect of nitrous being injected is that it's very flammable and can easily explode an engine. It can cause extreme heat inside the engine, so it only can be ran for about 20 seconds at a time. For a nitrous bottle, as shown here, in the nitrous system, costs about $40 to $55 to fill up about a 14-inch tall nitrous bottle, which would only last probably 10 to 15 times down through the drag strip or any kind of application that you're using it in. The average cost of a nitrous system is $500 to $1,200 would be in the most expensive. The most horsepower cars can create from nitrous can be up to 2,000 to 3,000 horsepower. Obviously, these are not on engines that you could drive every day. These are on full drag race cars, but it can be made of a lot of horsepower for very cheap. The second power adder that we're going to talk about today is turbochargers. Turbocharger is another form of a power adder. Again, the way a turbocharger works is it's adding air, which is going to add more fuel, which creates more horsepower. It's basically bolts up to the exhaust system that's previously on the car and uses the exhaust gases that are running through the engine as the engine's running. And it has a turbine side on the turbo, located here, that spins. It's like a fan, spins inside the exhaust by the air being pushed into it. And the other side is getting sucked in through the intake side, as shown here. The intake side is labeled in blue. It sucks into the engine. It goes into what we call the intercooler. The intercooler then compresses the air, and as it compresses the air, it creates a lot more room for more air molecules to get into the engine. So in essence, simply, what a turbocharger is doing is it's allowing the engine to ingest more air by forcing it. It's called forced induction, and that's the exact reason and principle behind it. The brown is the exhaust, so as it goes in, the faster you get the air in, the faster you get the air out, the more horsepower you make. You need more air, you need more fuel. And that's essentially what the turbocharger does. The combination can yield amazing results of power increase. There's no hazards as far as a nitrous bottle needing to be filled. There's no bottle or anything involved. It's taking the atmospheric pressure and it's bringing it above atmospheric pressure, which is causing it to pressurize. And so it's very safe. It's using its natural environment of the air, and it's putting it into the engine. So it's very safe. You don't have to worry about any leaks or anything like you would nitrous of exploding or anything. So those are very good benefits of it. The downside, because everything has a downside, would be the cost is roughly around $2,500 to $3,500. Now, most of you think, well, that's a lot of money. And yes, that is a lot of money. But the benefits of a turbocharger outweigh nitrous by far. When you're spending $40 to $50 for a nitrous bottle fill every couple runs, the turbocharger eventually itself will pay for itself, and the nitrous system will not. So, while it may be cheaper to add nitrous to a car, the more safer way and effective way would be to add a turbocharger. Turbochargers not only add power without taking any power, so they just add power to power that's already existing. It sounds cool. Most people can agree with that. And it can't explode or anything. So remember this. When your night is young and you're sitting at the drag strip and you're idling at the line and you have a turbocharger under the hood, and you get up to the line and your adrenaline's pumping and you're ready to punch the gas and give it all the power that it has. You want to give it all the horsepower that you can make. And you have that turbocharger ready to go, the light goes green and you take off and you go screaming down the track, you will know that you made the right decision by choosing the turbocharger when you don't have to worry about bottle of nitrous exploding, causing leaks, the bottle not being filled if you forgot for some reason or it ran on low pressure, and you are guaranteed going to be outrunning the competition.